Take long and our judges aren't back yet. So while we're waiting, if you don't mind, I'm going to tell you about the first time I was in Texas. Now, before I start, how many of you are familiar with Texas Leghorn chickens? Anybody? A few of you. Okay. Don't worry about it. I wouldn't have known about them either if it hadn't been for my Aunt Flo. You see, back in the early days of gene research, the folks down at Texas A&M University developed a new breed of chickens. They started out with a regular old white leghorn, and they added turkey genes for bigger breasts. They added porpoise genes for more intelligence, and they added Texas Longhorn genes, well, just because it was Texas. And they called these new chickens Texas Leghorns. Now, because the chickens were experimental, they had to be picked up at the hatchery down in Texas, and my Aunt Flo was getting long in years, so she asked me and my cousin Dave to drive down to Texas and pick up the chickens for her. Well, we got to the hatchery down there in Steep Holler, Texas. They loaded us up with 15 boxes of 100 chicks each in the back seat, mentioned something about flimsy boxes, and sent us on our way. Now, I'll admit Dave was driving entirely too fast over one of the biggest hills in the state of Texas when we rounded a bend, and what do we meet coming down the middle of the road towards us but a truckload of chickens? Well, Dave jerked the wheel to the right to avoid a collision, and we went off the side of the road down a steep embankment and finally ended up on a road just down the hill from where we'd been. Those 15 flimsy boxes in the back seat, they all collapsed, freeing those 1,500 chickens. Well, Dave and I looked in the back to survey the carnage we were sure we were going to find, but remarkably, there were only 2 broken wings and 1 broken leg. And Dave, who'd been through EMT training, was able to set the broken bones and splint the broken limbs using some kitchen matches he had in his pocket and some kite string that happened to roll out from under the seat while we were going down the hill. Well, I got out the map to see where this new road we were on went to. You all know what a map is, don't you? Okay. Well, anyway, one of those chicks jumped up on that map and started looking at it like he was studying our route. And you know, that chick must have had a double shot of Longhorn genes, because he was head and shoulders taller than the other chicks and had little horn nubs sticking out the side of his head. Well, he jumped up on the dash-mounted rear-view mirror, sat right there in the middle looking out the front like he was going to be our guide, and it was so cute, we started calling him Daniel Boone. Well, we got back on the road and came to our first turn, and Daniel went over at the left side of the mirror and said, "Cheep, cheep, 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 cheep." Now, I know it was just a coincidence. He got that turn right. Then he got the next 3 turns right, too, and I began to wonder. Well, about this time, we noticed we were getting low on gas, and we realized we couldn't get out of the car, because if we opened the car door, some of those chicks were bound to get out, and we'd never catch them. So we pulled into a full-service gas station and talked the attendant into bringing us out 2 bottles of Pepsi-Cola, 4 candy bars, 5 packs of Juicy Fruit chewing gum, and 17 little bags of Fritos corn chips, because the chicks looked hungry. Well, we crumbled up the Fritos and scattered them out so the chicks could all get something to eat. And we got back on our way, and we were making pretty good time. We'd crossed into Oklahoma. We're just coming up to Bug Tussle, if you know where that's at. And we heard this racket in the back seat as 987 voices in unison were chanting, "Jeep, Jeep, Jeep, Jeep." I looked back there to see what in the world was going on, and there, spread out across the back seat, standing in formation, the chicks had spelled out D-R-I-N-K. I guess they were thirsty after those salty corn chips. So we pulled into the Sonic, and we ordered 5 large 7-Ups, an empty cup, and 9 extra straws. Well, sir, we poked pinholes along the length of those straws, stuck them together end for end, you know, and stuck one end of this into the empty cup, sealed all the joints with Juicy Fruit chewing gum, had ourselves a drip water system so all those chicks could get a drink. And when they got finished drinking, we got on our way. But we hadn't gone a quarter of a mile till Dave hit a pothole. And that pothole jarred us. Well, it jarred us so much, Dave's glass eye popped out and rolled onto the floor. Now, there were so many chicks down there, you couldn't really see the eye, but you could follow its path as the chicks were bowled over, as the eye rolled back and forth and back and forth. I finally caught the eye, was just ready to hand it back to Dave when we heard cheep, 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 cheep coming from Daniel Boone. Well, Dave looks up, and what's he see? But another truckload of chickens. This one is stalled right in the road, right in front of us. Dave hit the brake with both feet. Chicks inside that car flew everywhere. Dave's other glass eye popped out. But I caught it before it hit the floor. Well, I gave Dave back first his blue eye and then his brown eye. Yeah, you can imagine what would happen if he got him in backwards. Woo! Well, sir, it was at this point that we noticed there laying on the dash was Daniel Boone, unconscious and not breathing. Well, Dave put his EMT training to use again and started mouth-to-beak resuscitation. And in no time, Daniel Boone was up and breathing on his own again. But you know, his horn nub had cracked the windshield. He had a goose egg the size of a kidney bean on the side of his head. Well, I cut off a little strip of Kleenex. Dave expertly wrapped it around his head, sealed it in place with a little wad of juicy fruit chewing gum, and we laid Daniel out in the open Kleenex box to recuperate. Well, the rest of our trip was pretty well nothing exciting happened. But when we got to Aunt Flo's, we asked Aunt Flo, how in the world are we supposed to get these chickens from the car into the chicken house without them getting loose and running all over the place? And Aunt Flo said, chicken clucker! Now, just in case there's any of you that doesn't know what a chicken clucker is, a chicken clucker is a yellow plastic chicken beak that went over Aunt Flo's nose and mouth. And when Aunt Flo talked American into the chicken clucker, it translated whatever she said into chicken. Well, sir, she set the dial for Leghorn dialect, gave a few clucks, and those chicks all snapped to attention and started lining up in rows. Aunt Flo opened the door, put up a board for a ramp, gave a few more clucks, and those chicks started marching down that ramp 2 by 2, led by Daniel Boone with his head all wrapped up, and Pegleg, who was now walking with a crutch made from the short end of a broken straw and held together with juicy fruit chewing gum. Have you heard this story before? Oh, well, anyway, they went into that chicken house just as pretty as you please. Now, I'd like to be able to tell you that Aunt Flo was a great success in the chicken business. No. By the time those chicks got big enough to send off to the packing house, Aunt Flo was so attached to them, she didn't have the heart to do it. And then the expenses started eating into Aunt Flo's savings. And I'm not talking just chicken feed here, neither. Those chicks learned to communicate better. And they started asking for things I don't think they made good use of. For example, I don't think a one of those chicks ever got past hunt and peck typing on those computers they had Aunt Flo buy. Though I've got to admit, the royalties off that book they managed to peck out were a true godsend to Aunt Flo. And just in case any of you are interested, I went over to the library today. They have a copy of that book in the library. 1,500 Uses for Juicy Fruit Chewing Gum by Daniel Leghorn Boone. Thank you.